Welcome to Wellspring on the Air, where professional Christian counselors share practical and biblical insights for everyday living. Why? Because hearts and minds matter. My name is Rebecca, and I serve as the Resource Development Manager here at Wellspring Counseling and the host of today's podcast that we've entitled Analyzing and Reframing Your Triggers. Joining me today is Lindsay Steffen.
Hi.
Welcome, Lindsay. We're glad to have you again. Do you mind just sharing a little bit about who you are, what you do for Wellspring?
Yes, so I am the clinical manager at Wellspring, which means I'm over our therapist team and all clinical matters, and I'm also a licensed mental health counselor, so I still see clients.
Awesome. She's amazing. We love having her on staff. So today we're going to tackle our third part of the series that we've entitled Going on Vacation, Remember to Pack Your Therapist. So we're going to share just some insights today, just some information that we want to prepare people as they go on family vacation. We're preparing for summer. We're preparing for family reunions, trying to escape from work life and that sort of thing. And we are anticipating that there's just going to be a lot of family dynamics and things that happen. And sometimes we come back from vacations needing a vacation. And so we have a couple different topics that we want to tackle, but today we're really focusing in on analyzing and reframing our triggers that could possibly come up. So let's get started. Let's jump in. Let's talk about what are some tools, Lindsay, that you would say are helpful for analyzing some of our triggers. Can we anticipate triggers for family vacations?
Yeah, for sure. So you can usually look back and you see the evidence of what has happened before, right? A lot of these things, they're patterns, they're cycles. You know exactly what's going to happen in the situation because you've lived it 100 times before.
Unfortunately.
Right. So you kind of know this is how it will likely go, 99% chance. So I work with clients, and you can do this with your therapist or even independently, play the movie through. So kind of have that future movie in your head and play through, okay, I'm getting on the airplane, I'm flying there, I'm arriving, saying hi, day 1, day 2. So what are the likely conflicts or difficult things that are going to pop up? So as you're playing that movie through, notice how you feel. Notice, where do I start to have negative feelings? Is it during dinner time when we're cooking and so starts to say something to me, or someone starts asking me about my job or my marital status? I feel trapped, cornered, whatever it is for you. Everyone has their
college
own.
Students, it's what are you doing with your life?
Exactly.
A whole family vacation of, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life.
Yes. Or when are you having kids? Or all these invasive things that people may not know. Hey, I don't know what my career will be. I'm struggling with fertility. All these things that just put a pressure on us, and we feel like, I don't want to be here. You know, I feel like I'm under the light and being like in a criminal case where they're asking me all these questions, and it's okay when we don't know. So I say, as you play that movie through, notice those negative feelings that start to come up as you think about certain parts of the trip, and then even start to notice your body. So we say that a lot as therapists, notice your body, but that's because usually when an emotion is coming, you actually feel it in your body first. So you don't have anxiety immediately, but you start to have like flushing, sweating, your heart starts beating faster, and then you feel anxious. So your body responds quicker. And so if you can notice, hey, what am I feeling in my body? Okay, I'm starting to get that lightheadedness. I think I'm getting anxious. So you're playing the movie through and you're noticing, where are those hard parts where the negative body sensations and the negative emotions come in. And then you want to think about, okay, this is present triggers, but do some of these triggers actually relate to the past? So have I had this conversation before? Have I been questioned about this before? So it's not just one layer of present distress, but it's layers of these past conversations about the same thing. So you have this whole like reserve of trauma or conflict or negative emotions.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's super helpful. It's bringing in awareness. Like, what can I be aware of as I'm stepping into this?
Yes.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. So that makes sense to me. But what happens when you realize that your triggers aren't necessarily like situations that may happen or may come up, but they're the actual people?
Yes.
On your family vacation. You can't just say, no, we're going to exclude Uncle so-and-so and Aunt whoever, you know, like what happens? How do you kind of handle that? Like when you anticipate, okay, I'm going on family vacation with this person and we don't get along.
Right. This is where some things sound nice in therapy, but when the rubber meets the road, it can be really hard. So I'm not going to give you the therapeutic answer in a little bow that is not real. It's in theory, it's real, but in real life, it's not. So the truth of the matter is when you're working with people who trigger you, you can't control them. You don't know how bad the trigger will be, when it will come up. And so there is a sense of knowing something's coming, but you're out of control of knowing when. That gives a lot of people anxiety. Like, when is that coming, you know? But what we can do is notice, okay, the trigger's coming at some point, and we want to analyze the trigger. You talked about this whole podcast is on analyzing and reframing. So let's start with analyzing. There's usually 3 reasons we have a trigger. One is that the person is breaking our value system. So maybe your uncle is very dishonest and you're a very honest person. So when he's talking about his business deals or things he's doing, you know, you are getting mad. But it's not just because he's an unpleasant person, but he's breaking a value that you have as a person. Or maybe you have someone in the family who speaks down to men or speaks down to women, and there's some sort of like gender discrimination. If you're someone who really has a heart for justice and equality, and we all should, but some people have that inborn personality trait of having even like another layer of that as a priority. So that person is really going to get mad when you put her down, put him down. And so noticing that triggers can be just breaking your value system. So that will make you feel more angry, more distressed, more sad than maybe you would if it didn't go against a very strongly held value.
Yeah, those are good words to put to that, because I feel like I've experienced that but didn't really know what was going on. Like, there's something that's just rubbing me wrong about this person. Right. And it doesn't matter how much time I've spent with them, what I see about their life. It's like, I just can't get behind it.
Yeah,
I can't get behind them.
Something really bothers you, like scratches that like part
and
of
I
you.
can't
Like,
pinpoint it, but putting that it's that like the opposition of values. For sure. Interesting.
Yeah. So that's one reason. There's also sometimes someone will trigger us because they remind us of something in the past. So they break our value system, or they remind us of a past trauma or someone who was a part of a trauma. So maybe, this person looks a lot like the person who did XYZ to me. And so they're giving us like a taste of a bad memory. And so our body just rejects them. Like, I had a lot of bad experiences with authoritative women. So then if there's a woman who has a strong personality, I might naturally reject her just involuntarily. My body's like, I don't feel good around you.
Get away. I don't want to be next to you.
Yes, exactly. And maybe they didn't even do anything wrong, but they just remind you of that old experience. So we have the triggers of breaking your value system, reminding you of someone, and also the third is reminding us of ourself. So if I see something in Rebecca that I don't like, sometimes it's because I also have that same trait. And so I'm like, man, she's really moody. She's really up and down. That's so irritating. You're not. But
I try not to.
You're right. But maybe it's because I'm really moody too. And it's something I feel like is a weakness, or it embarrasses me. Or I'm like, I wish I was more like just stable. Like other people I see, they don't seem to be ruffled by things that happen in the day. And so maybe I'm rejecting that in Rebecca, but really I'm rejecting it in myself.
Yeah, that's a hard one. You got to take like a fine-tooth comb to kind of comb through those sorts of thoughts and feelings too.
You have to be very self-aware and willing to look at yourself too.
A mirror that oftentimes I don't want to do, because I'd rather blame it on somebody else, and that's the way that you are and not the way that I am.
Exactly.
So, man, yeah. And so it's kind of easy then to get stuck in. So that kind of all sounded a little bit on the negative side, you know, like you're analyzing all the possible triggers that could come up, and then the thought is, then what? Like once I realize, okay, these people can be triggering me, or this scenario or situation can be triggering to me, and I've done that sort of internalization of what my triggers are about these people, the values, that sort of thing. What do I do with it next then?
Yeah. So we want to find those negative beliefs that we have about ourselves, the people, the situation, and we want to reframe them, like Rebecca was saying. So we want to reframe them to be more positive. Doesn't mean we reframe it to be rainbows and butterflies, something that's not true, but we do reframe it to be more helpful, I always say. So there can be negative parts to something, but also positive parts. Our brain naturally looks for the negative a lot of the time, so we want to retrain it to also look for the positive by default. So example of that could be, she always does this. We learn in therapy and couples counseling, never, always. Those are words that can be very confining. Does she always or does she often? Saying you always do this, you never do this. It's very judgmental. It's critical. And they probably don't always do it, but maybe they do it often. So you could say, she often does this and it really bothers me. So that's reframing it to be a little more fair. It's more, you could say positive, but really it's just fair. It's fair because does she do it every day? No. But when she does it 3 times a year, it really bothers me. Yeah. You could also think of something like, they should do this. Should statements are very shaming. When we think I should do it, she should do it, it's like this pressure of like, you're not good enough or you're inadequate. You should be doing this. And so those are good statements to avoid as well. If we're reframing something negative, like I can't do it, I'm not capable. That right there, that's a very negative, self-deprecating statement. And so we would want to reframe that to, I did fail this time, but it's possible for me to accomplish it in the future, or practice doesn't make perfect, practice makes progress, we say. So maybe I'm inadequate. Okay, let's look for evidence when you were adequate. You did graduate from college, so you were an adequate student. You have kids who are healthy, so you are an adequate mother. So we have to look at areas of our life that contradict those negative beliefs. So, I'm not attractive. Okay, but just last night, your husband, your boyfriend said, wow, you look so pretty in that dress. So are you unattractive? Or whatever the case is. We all have our different, like the situation, going on this vacation. This family vacation is going to be a disaster. Is the whole thing a disaster, or will there be parts that are a disaster? Yeah, right?
Difference. Yeah.
So maybe a lot of this trip might be challenging, and there could be some pleasant moments in there too.
Yeah.
So reframing.
I like that. Yeah. So that's super helpful to hear the possibility of reframing and just using different phrases to reframe our perspective on how we think something will go or should go or how somebody is. It's not the always, but it's the often. It's not the I am, but sometimes I can be.
Yes, exactly. Looking for the alternatives.
Yeah, exactly. And so what happens though when you've tried this whole reframing idea?
Yeah.
And you're kind of still at a loss. What are some other options or some ways to kind of help you pass those triggers or kind of get past that negative thinking?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And honestly, that's why as therapists, we have a job, because this is what we're talking about with thought reframing is cognitive behavior therapy.
Got it.
You reframe your thoughts to change your emotions and your behaviors. So it's a great practice for anyone. But if you have deeper trauma or just other difficult things that have made that layer effect, like I talked about, you probably need to see a therapist to start cleaning out the root. So it's not really an issue up here. It's an issue that goes all the way down here. So you get with a therapist, perhaps you do some trauma work, talk therapy, EMDR, and you start to get the root out. So then when you do reframe up here, you can do it because you don't have all this negative kind of events from the past informing this one event. Yeah. So it's if you think of this, you're trying to reframe a thought now, but you're needing to reframe thoughts back to age 10. That's really hard for your mind to do. You need to clean some of that out and heal it, and then you can successfully practice that.
Yeah, no, that's super helpful. And it's wild to think that, going on family vacation can pull that up,
Yes,
I'm just going to hang out with my cousins, and then all of a sudden I'm a 10-year-old and I need to process all these things.
Yeah, it's really common, honestly. There's a book called How to Go Home Without Feeling Like a Child, because it's such a phenomenon that we go home, we become our worst selves, we hate it, and so it's like, I don't want to be with my family. But really, it's our job to learn how to be with our family in a healthy way where we don't lose ourselves and we practice our tools.
Yeah. No, that sounds super helpful. And kind of a little foreshadowing of our next podcast that we have talking about, what is it? Adulting?
Yeah. How to show
your adult self.
Yes. Bring your adult self when you go on vacation or when you interact with family. So often, like I said, we revert back to our child self and we don't want to do that. We hate that. It's like, why am I acting like a 10-year-old having a tantrum with, I'm an adult, I'm 25, I'm 40, I'm 50, whatever. And so we're going to talk about how to show up as your adult self.
I like that. I'm excited for that next topic. So thank you, Lindsay, for coming and sharing all your insights on today's podcast that we've entitled Analyzing and Reframing Your Triggers as you anticipate going on vacation. This is our third part of our series that we've entitled Going on Vacation, Remember to Pack Your Therapist. Join us next time on Wellspring on the Air. Hey there, thank you so much for tuning into Wellspring on the Air. We hope that you got something valuable out of today's episode. One of our goals at Wellspring is to make mental health resources and content accessible to everyone. We bring mental health experts and voices from our own staff and community to share insights and experiences. We want to keep these conversations going and reach as many people as possible, whether they're into therapy or not, and we cannot do it alone. If you believe in what we're doing and want to see more content like this, please consider supporting us. A donation to our education fund helps us create more episodes, more content, more resources to reach more people. Thank you for your support. Check out the link in our description box to donate and remember to subscribe to our channel.